The gospel won't make sense to you. You want to run back to it. That is becoming normal to you. Your brain, your mind, your thinking is getting harder and harder. And it's harder for the gospel to get through. And Jesus talked about it. He said, isn't it not because even now, because of the hardness of your hearts? He was talking to his disciples. They had been raised, what? Under the old covenant. And here the new covenant is standing right there talking to them, God with them. But they were receiving what he said. He said, is it not even now because of the hardness of your hearts? He said, have you forgot the miracle? Have you forgot the fishes and the loaves? Have you forgot that I've raised the dead? Have you forgotten that I've healed everyone? Not just some, I've healed all. All of those things. You've seen me walk on water. You've seen me calm the sea and calm the storms. Calm the wind. He says, isn't it not now you don't believe, even because of the hardness of your hearts? And then when you look where we started, back at John 14, he said, show us the Father, and it'll be sufficient. The fishes and the loaves, that wasn't sufficient. You walking on the water, that wasn't sufficient. Think of what they're saying. Think of what we say. Because we have history of all of this. But is it sufficient, or do we still want to run back here and say, thou shalt not steal? I've got to follow that. No, if you follow the love of God, you won't steal. Not because of the law, but because of him, because of the truth, because of the word, wanting to be like him. He says, beloved, even now are we the sons of God. Not that we're going to be like him. He says, now are we the sons of God. He said, the word says we're just like Jesus now in this world. But what happens? That being indurated, being rendered stupid by teachings from the old covenant. The old covenant is given not to us to live by, but as a witness to us, that we might not fall prey to the same lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life that the Old Testament saints did. It has nothing to do with us today. That book, turn to the book of Hebrews, and then I've got to speed up. The book of Hebrews, and I believe it's in chapter 8. In Hebrews chapter 8, and we'll start reading in verse 6. The he in here is referring to Jesus. But now has he obtained a more excellent ministry. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6. We got it? Okay. But now has he obtained, that he is referring to Jesus, a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant. Of a what covenant? If the new covenant, Jesus is the mediator of the new covenant, why does the church want to run back to the old? Why is this, church? We have a better covenant. What's wrong with our covenant? What's wrong with staying with the better covenant than running back to the old covenant? Let me read on though. It says, which was established upon better promises. We have better promises than the old covenant have, why would we want to run back to the lesser promises if we have better promises?
They're familiar with those and
They are familiar with them. The reason they're familiar with them is that religion is under the guidance of Satan. And without realizing it, people are running to places and they're full of people. And Satan doesn't discourage them from going to church, because that's where they're going to be indurated, rendered or made stupid. Yes?
But you said that God gave us the Old Testament so we would realize we had a problem.
Yeah, well, what? No. He gave us the Old Covenant so that we would not fall prey to the same faults that they fell to, prey to. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. It's only those three things in the world. Now, how is it that we escape the corruption that's in the world through the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life? How do we escape? That's what we need to know. Right? Not what happened to those other people or people going to churches. How do we escape it? Through the knowledge of God. We escape the corruption that is in the world through the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. We're talking about wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and receiving. Isn't that what we've been studying, right? It's through the knowledge of God. Right now we've been talking about getting an understanding. Get an understanding of why we're in this position and why you personally don't want to be in the same position, because I don't want anyone or anything rendering me stupid. Right? I wasn't blessed with an IQ of 250 or 240. I don't even know if it's 200. I don't know if it's 180. Right? I have to read things more than once to understand them. I have to study this stuff. It's not just I got a memory. Oh, turn to page 834 and this is on that page and this is line 3, you know, with the 4th word in. I don't have a memory like that. I don't have a mind like that. But I've got a mind good enough to study. And if it takes me 10 times to get it, and it only takes you 2 times to get it, I've realized that at the end of my 10th time of going over it, I know as much as you know, and you got yours in too. The only thing I had to do is it's incumbent upon me to do my 10 times studying. If I had to read it 50 times and you only had to read it once, I know at the end of that 50th time, I'm going to be right there with you. And he did bless me with the tenacity to read it the 50 times if I have to.
yes, to know that you'll get it.
I'll know that I'll get it. I'll just keep on plodding and plodding and plodding. Say, I didn't get it that time. I need to read it again. I have 48 different translations of the Bible here. And the reason I have 48 different translations, I'll read something and it's just like we're in a conversation, but there's no one there to converse with, and you're teaching me, and I say to you, I feel like I almost understand, but could you say it just a little differently? And that's what these translations do. I hear another voice saying it this way, and another one saying it this way, and another one saying it that way, and all the time is forming a picture in my mind of what it actually means. You get to see, I had to read it 50 times, 50 different ways. But then I got it. There's no shame in that. There's no special prize for learning in one time over learning in 50 times, if I can still learn it. So let's go on here, though. This is some more about that old covenant. In verse 7. For if that first covenant had been faultless, there should no place have been sought for the second. Verse 8. For finding fault with them, he saith, but he is talking about God the Father, behold, the day comes, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Why was he going to make a new covenant? The old covenant was faultless, had faults in it, right? Okay, Let me ask you a question. Make you think the next time you're listening to someone trying to teach you from that rendering stupid ministry. It'll make you think when someone's trying to make you a rockhead.
Yes.
Which part of the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, had the faults? No, it didn't say it was all completely faultless. It had faults. But which part of it had faults?
Well, really, none of it had faults, it's just that we couldn't do it.
Well, no, he said it had faults. He found fault with, not us finding fault with it. Said God found fault with it. Let's read it again. It says, verse 7, for if the first covenant had been faultless, there should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. God found fault with the old covenant. Now, the fault is what Brother Bill said. The fault that he found with it, he wrote out a covenant that man couldn't keep. The reason man couldn't keep it, it had God laws in it. The laws that he lives by. See, it wasn't man's law. Man's law said, don't drive 50 miles an hour down the street out here. That's man's law. This is God's law. Man went to God in the Old Covenant, and while the Old Covenant was written, the children of Israel who were living under grace, which is what we're living under now, but religion has us wanting to live back under the law. They said to God, hey, we know about your grace. They'd been receiving grace. They complained and murmured. Isn't murmuring a sin? What happened to them when they murmured? Before the Old Covenant, what happened to the children of Israel when they murmured? No, they had everything. When they murmured, they got everything they murmured about. That's grace.
Yes.
Murmuring is a sin.
Yes.
But they weren't punished. They were blessed. You brought us out here to kill us. He parted the sea. All of their enemies were covered up. We don't have any water. He gave them water out of a rock. The rock they carried around with them. If you don't know, the rock went with them. How do you keep enough water for 3 million people in a rock that you can move and carry with you? How long would it take you to get to the water fountain, 3 million people, if they lined up to get a drink? What kind of miracle is this? They complained about the heat. He gave them a pillar of clouds by day and a flame of fire by night. They had air conditioning and heating. They complained about not having meat. He gave them so much meat, they were throwing up. It says it, they just gorged themselves with meat. Every time they complained, all the way up to Mount Sinai. When they get to Mount Sinai, they tell God, hey, we can do anything you ask us to do. They were bragging. You have to go back and read it and realize what was going on. Say, hey, no matter what you say, we can do it. No big deal, God. God says, oh, is that right? You don't need my grace? They're saying, we don't need your grace. We can do whatever you tell us. He said, okay, then live by my law, not man's law, the laws that I live by. He said, we can easily do that. And that's where the trouble came in. That's where the fault was. So he knew that they could not live by his standard. That's why he had promised. He knew all of this was going to happen. He didn't make it happen, but he knew it was going to happen. And that's why Jesus was promised all the way back in the garden. The seed of woman shall bruise your head, Satan. He's going to take away all authority that you think you have. And that's why Satan all those years was trying to kill the newborn and the firstborn and all of that stuff. But here, what my question is though, How do you know when you go and listen to that old covenant teacher that he's not teaching you fault? If we don't know what part was faultless, had the fault in it, does he know? And how do you know he's not teaching you the faulty part? Why would you listen? Why would you lend ear to that? Be careful how you hear. That's the scripture I tried to find at the beginning. I didn't use the word careful. That's not it either. Thought for sure it said take care. I'll have to find it.
What's a good summary of that last scripture, Hebrews 7?
Oh, where we were. Let's finish that because I got distracted. It says in verse 8, for finding fault with them, he saith, behold, the day cometh, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind, and I will write them into their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. Now, if you notice the difference in the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, in the Old Covenant it says, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. In the New Covenant, he says, I will, I will, I will. It's not based on us nodding, it's based on his willingness and what he will do for us. And that's why we have to start with is based on better promises. These are all promises that he made to us. Why would we want to run back to the thou shalt nots and leave the I wills that he said that he would do? And let's finish it. It says in verse 11, or verse 10, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest, for I will be merciful. See these I wills still going on? I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. Their sins and their what? Why do we remind him? Why do we go to him reminding him? The shall nots. Yeah.
Remember the prophets.
Yeah, remember how bad I am, God? Remember 2 days ago when I stole that such and such? I took the cookies out of the cookie jar. Remember, don't you remember that?
You want me to?
Yeah, this is what he said. Would this be common in a person that was having a challenge because of religion with some sin that's repetitive? Like a person is addicted to doing something that's sinful, right? Would this be common to think of a person praying this way? That was repentant. Say, Father, I did it again. Wouldn't that be common in the thinking? Here's God saying, what again?